Trying to predict the future when it comes to your numbers is one of those perplexing problems that's been facing business for years. What we have here are air traffic patterns for all the different airports, and we've got this data that we see listed here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a series of different function formulas to predict the future events. In other words, if we can see that in January, last January and February, March, and April, these were our numbers, we would like to maybe predict what the next number might be. Given what we see here, where are we going? Are we going up? Are we going down? And what would be a real good guesstimate as to what that January number is going to be. And I'm going to show you how to predict that next number using the trend function and also using the forecast.ETS function. They both are similar in a way, but they do give slightly different predictive type numbers or values. But again, the big question is how are we trending? Are we trending up or down? What's the number and so forth. Now, what I've done is I've created like a little graph here of our current data. So for Chicago, this is what it looked like for the year 2025. So what we want to do is figure out what it's going to look like for 2026. All right. So we're going to start out using the trend function. So I'm going to go ahead, and what we're going to do here is I'm just going to show you how to put together this function where it'll just give us the one number, because the way that this function is kind of designed initially is to give you that next number. What I'm going to eventually do is show you how we can have it give us many numbers out, depending on how we kind of put this thing together and how we set up the different things within that formula. So we're going to start out first of all with equal and then TR, and you'll see the trend function pop up there. So we'll double click that, and the first thing it needs to know are what the previous numbers or what the historical numbers are that it's going to use to make this this future prediction. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to select from January all the way to December, right there. Okay. Comma. All right. And now we're going to tell it what those periods were. In this case, it's going to be January through December. So we're going to go ahead and select that. All right. And then another comma. And then what it needs to know is what's going to be the next period that's going to predicting, and that's going to be January. So what we do is we click on to that guy. All right. That's it. So this is the function that you'd put in if you wanted to figure out, given you've got January through December numbers, what will be the January number. So we go ahead and hit the enter key on that, and there it is. So it predicts about 38. Okay. Now, given we have a whole lot more numbers we want to predict out to, and we also want to do the prediction for each of these other airports, the way that we put this function in, the way that we put this in here, if we try to do any type of copying across or copying down, it's not going to mean anything, because part of this whole process is the fact that parts of this formula, when we go to copy it across or copy it down, parts of the formula we want to change and or expand, whereas others we want them to stay locked in. All right, so what I'm going to show you here is how we go about thinking and how we go about figuring this out to get it just right, so that we can go ahead and just copy it across, copy it down, and we've got it. So it'll take us maybe an extra minute to modify or tweak the formula so that we can copy it across and copy it down, and it will work. So here comes the fun part. So here's how it works. The reference, if we're going to be doing the formula for February, then in essence what would happen is this part of the formula would be still B4, but then it would be through N4, because now it's taking into consideration January as well to make that prediction for February. So you get that. At the same time, though, when we go to copy the formula down, you know, when we're doing the next one down, the reference to B4 would have to be then be B5, all right? And the reference to N or M4 would have to be M5, okay? So we're going to have to kind of tweak it using the absolute to make sure that that stays in place. And you'll see that in just a second. The reference from B4 or B3 through M3, which are the dates up here, that also has to expand. And we have to expand it so where the B3 stays locked in, all right? But then the M3 can change to N3 and so forth as we're copying it across to constantly be able to give us that next number, all right? But at the same time, when we go to copy the formula down, we want to make sure that the row doesn't change. In other words, we don't want this to shift from here down to here when we're doing Tampa. Okay, so we're going to have to set up the absolute a certain way that way. And then the other thing, the reference that we had to N3 is going to change to O3 as we copy it across, right? But we want to make sure that when we copy it down, the 3 does not change to a 4. So we have to set that up a certain way. So here is what we're going to do. We're going to start out with the B3 here. Now the B3, or I'm sorry, the B4 has to stay locked in as far as the column, but not the row, okay? So we're going to go over here to B4, click onto that, all right? And we're going to hit the F4 key 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and that locks in then the column. So that won't, as we copy it across, it won't shift to February and March. It stays anchored in there. Now, the reference to M4, we want that to be fully changeable. So when we copy across, it changes the N4 and O4 and so forth. And when we copy it down, we want that M4 to change to M5 and so forth. So that's fine. Now, the reference to B3, this one right here, that's the date here. We want that locked in so that when we copy the formula across, it stays as B3. And also when we copy the formula down, the row doesn't change either, so it stays B3, period. All right? So to do that, we just hit the F4 key 1 time. It locks the whole thing in. Now the reference to M3, which is going to be this guy right here, okay, you know, going all the way across here. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that expands out. But at the same time, when we copy it down, the row doesn't change. So in that case, we're going to go F4, F4, and we do that. And then the reference to N, let me just get out of the way here a little bit here. The reference to N3, which is the next predictive date, you know, starting from here, or what the prediction of the date, then we want to make sure that that also doesn't shift down, but it is able to shift across to do each one of the months. So in this case, we hit the F4, F4, and that stays locked in. Perfect. So just by doing that, that has allowed us now to take that one single formula we're doing here at N4 and be able to copy it all the way to December and then copy it all the way down to Maui onto row 10 there. All right. So we go ahead and hit the enter key. There's the 38th that we saw before. Go back to it. Now we'll go across. There we go. And then we'll go down like that. So that is what the program is thinking will happen for next year. All right. Might not be 100%, but it's probably one of your best guesstimates as to what's going to happen. So this is more what they refer to as linear smoothing, where it just pretty much kind of irons out the ups and downs and just kind of gives you kind of a smooth pattern up. So the way I've got the graph here, this part here was for what we already had, what we had as a known. This is what we predicted, and then this is them combined. Okay, so take a look at that. So now that's your first choice, you know, when you're doing this type of prediction. Now the next one we're going to do, we'll go down here to N14. Now this type we're going to be using a different function. This one is called the forecast.ETS. Now you're going to see a slight difference with this one, and therefore then you can kind of make up your own minds as to which one you think would work best for your type of situation. Okay, so we're going to first of all do this as if we were just going to be doing it where we wanted to predict what January is going to be based on these numbers here. Okay, so we're going to go to here. We're going to start out with equal and then FOR, and you're going to see forecast ETS. Double click that one. Now, first thing we need to do is tell it the date. Okay, so the predictive date. So this is going to be over here, this guy here, N13. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of click onto that. So that's going to be the first date that we're predicting out to. All right, that's what we're trying to figure out here. Comma. All right, and now on this case, we're going to look at the actual data. All right, that we already have, that's the known, and we're going to select that all the way over to December. So that's what we know. All right, and then a comma, and then we have the dates that we have to figure. So the ones that we are known. So it's going to be January through December of 2025. Now the referencing that we've been making in this function is no different than the referencing that we did on the trend function, you know, the previous one. It's just kind of flipped around a little bit, but that's just the design of the function. But overall, it's the same thing. So we're going to go in here and we're going to, in essence, lock down certain parts of the referencing, pretty much the same as we did in trend. So let's do this first. Let's go ahead and just hit the enter key so you can see this. So when we do that, we get 37. So that's just a little bit less than what the trend was doing, right? So I'll just show you that to you. Okay, now we're going to go back in there. I'm going to double click this. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to make certain parts absolute and all that, just like we did before. So the reference to January here, we want to make sure that when we copy this formula across, that will change to February and March, but that when we copy it down, it will not change, the row. So what we'll do is, and we'll just do it from here, you'll just click on to the N13 reference, hit the F4 key one time, two times. Say that locks in the row but not the column, so it'll know to go to O and to P and so forth, but not change the row when we go down. All right. Now the next thing is on the reference to B14, we want to make sure that that reference over here, okay, stays locked in. All right. For going across, so it won't move that way, but when we copy it down, we want that row to change. So we're going to go ahead and hit that F4 key one time, two times, three times. There it goes. See, that just locks on the B. And on the M14, we're going to leave that one alone because we want that to expand out, and we also want it to change the row when it goes down. So that's fine there. And then for the referencing now to the dates up here, we want to make sure that that is completely locked in, that it won't move this way when it's copied, and it won't move this way, all right? So that's going to be a full absolute. And then we want to make sure that the December reference will expand to January and February and March, but the row won't change, so we're going to hit the F4 key 1 time, 2 times, and that locks in the 13. There we go. So just that slight little tweaking that we did with the absolute now makes it so where that formula now can be copied across and copied down. So we hit the enter key here, then we go back, and then we'll go ahead and copy it across. There it goes. And we'll copy it down like that. And then we'll click onto here and not wipe out my formatting. Wanted to show you this here. So that's pretty wild. So what happens here is you can kind of see a slight difference in, you know, the above and below. It comes out, I mean, when you look at this, which is this ETS, this forecast ETS, is actually, you know, from what I've read about it, it's what they call the Holt-Winters triple smoothing. So it's not just smoothing, it's triple smoothing, right? So what that really means is that it's less smoothing, I guess. You know, when they say triple smoothing, you think, well, it's going to give you a lot more. Well, it's obviously giving you less, because if you notice here and you compare, you know, the graph here, it's way different. I mean, it's still trending either up or down, depending, but it's giving you more detail. So when you combine the two, when you look at what it's going to look like, this is to me, when I look at this, I like this better. To me, that's more realistic than, you know, something like this one here. All right, so that's my thought. Now, as I said in the beginning, it's going to be up to you as to what you think would be best for your situation. Because if you look at, again, if you look at Tampa, using just the trending or the trend function, we end up with a total of 897. Here, we end up with 888, so a little bit less. And it seems to be that way with a lot of them. All right, I think even, yeah, except for, that's why I wanted to point out with Atlanta here, this one at the top came up to 800, whereas here it was 855. So there was something in the numbers here that caused overall to give it a little bit different of a number there, you know, as compared. So just kind of an interesting thing, I guess you'd call it. But hopefully, you know, if you're kind of stuck in that situation where you have to make you know, predictions, and you're trying to figure out the best way to maybe guesstimate what's going to be happening in the future, these two functions might hopefully come into mind that you can use. Okay, so I appreciate you watching my videos. Thanks a lot.